For our panel on defense and deterrence, our esteemed speakers are former Chief of the Air Staff of India, Air Marshal Rakesh Kumar Singh Bhadauria, a highly decorated pilot who served as India's 26th Chief of Air Staff. He served for over 40 years in the Indian Air Force. Dr. Prahlada Ramarao, the man behind India's famed Akash surface-to-air missile system. He has also helped shape India's missile defense capabilities, including the Astra and BrahMos. Ankit Mehta. Ankit Mehta is co-founder and CEO of IdeaForge Technology. Last year, IdeaForge's drones played a pivotal role in Operation Sindoor, providing critical intelligence to the Indian Army.
A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. May I also invite my colleague Shivan Channa to please take this conversation forward with our guests.
Thank you, Shreya. Absolute pleasure to finally be on this panel, and just to give a glimpse to all our viewers, to everybody here in attendance. We've been having this discussion already, so I think this will be a continuation of what we've already been discussing. Let us start very quickly, sir. Today's day and age, it's the Mediterranean Sea, the Red Sea, Black Sea, Caspian Sea, Arabian Sea. It's already seeing hostilities. South China Sea, it remains hostile, it remains volatile. Caribbean Sea has seen hostilities at least since September, and it doesn't seem to be abating anytime soon at this point. Economically, the world is feeling a strain for what is happening in West Asia. A large number of countries can very quickly get involved. At this point, there is a pertinent question which has been looming. Are we looking at a war which is not confined to just a few countries? And is warfare only now limited to what it was a few years ago, land, sea, and air? Or has it now expanded, as Army Chief also mentioned, to domains which are beyond land, sea, and air? It's cyber and it's space as well. So I wanted to understand, and Air Chief, sir, I'll start with you first. What are the domains of warfare today?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me here. I must thank WION. I think the last time I was with WION was during Op Sindoor, and I've always liked your low noise approach. Domains-wise, the nature is changing, technology has changed, and now, apart from classic, sea, land, and air, very important aspects that have come up are cyberspace and cognitive. I think Army Chief referred to it. So the multi-domain operation is the key today. Any operation, any conflict, including gray zone conflicts, there is always be multi-domains involved. And that is the key, I think, towards developing technologies, capabilities, and overall be able to integrate and conduct multi-domain operation. I think that is the key.
Dr. Ramarao, you mentioned something very, very critical to me, and I'd really request if you can bring it to the audience. Wars today, and I would say now let's give a little glimpse of what it's going to look like in times to come, and very soon. Times to come don't look like 50 years from now. That could be as soon as 5 years or 3 years from now. Where will wars be fought? And this is realistically speaking.
See, technologically, the way it's going, what we have seen, last war, current going on war, and the next, what we see is, it is moved from ground to air. That is, from a tank warfare, it has now come to air warfare. So, if you look at the forecasting, it will be in this space. The next war will be in the space, whatever done, because satellites are going to be involved, and delaying, you have to, the deterrence will come from adversary satellite, or you would like your adversary satellite to become ineffective. So the game will be moving to from ground to air, now it's going to move to space. So the whole focus will be space. How do we make sure that our space is fully protected, and we are also able to deny the airspace, space for others in case of any war. So that will be the next game changer. we have to focus on our strength of in the satellite domain.
So before we go forward to Ankit, if you can elaborate further, when you say it will be in space, this is satellite to satellite warfare. Are we looking at militarized satellites? What are we, if you can elaborate, sir?
Already our Space Department and Defense together, they are working together. How do we create the space war, space capabilities? That is, you have the, from one space asset, how do you deny the space asset for our adversary? This is what is going to be one. If you see that the asset of the adversary is ineffective, or denied, then we win the war. So it will be like that. And there are technologies being talked about how do we handle space to space, like a air-to-air interaction. It will happen. And probably it will emerge, as you see. There are many technologies going on from the space platform itself. We don't want to discuss all the details, but it will be, slowly, you will see how it is emerging.
Ankit, I just want to bring to everybody's attention, this panel is diverse because Ankit also brings in the fact that the private sector has now been involved in India's security architecture. This is something which is new for India. It has not always been the case. Ankit, I wanted to understand from you, what kind of a boost or shot in the arm do you feel the private sector or young companies like yourself, IdeaForge, brings in to the armed forces? And just to add, IdeaForge drones were used by the Indian Army for surveillance purposes during Operation Sindoor. So what kind of a arc does that add to our security apparatus?
No, thanks, Shivan. First of all, thank you for inviting me for this panel. I think WION is a channel that you go to often to get not just local but a global perspective on news and areas that we care about deeply on the strategic side. In terms of the private sector contribution, I think since the time defense has opened up to the private sector, a lot of work has been happening over the years, but I would say a lot of that work was foundational in getting us where we are today. We've been around as IdeaForge for the last 20 years, and we have ensured that each and every subsystem that goes into our platforms is actually designed and developed in the country. Now what that does is it's going to usher in a future where we will not be dependent on critical intelligence or areas that need adaptation on field, because one of the realities of war is that the speed of adaptation on ground is changing rapidly. People are evolving their countermeasures and their countermeasures faster than it was ever possible before, because most of the war is becoming robotic and software defined, or the tactics are changing very, very fast. And therefore, having local capability of adapting to it, of the private industry being involved, and as more and more technology is involved in warfare, we will need that muscle. Otherwise, we won't be able to sustain our strategic autonomy, because we have seen now 2-3 things in the wars that have happened. One is we've seen that there has been a threat on the sabotage, on the assets that we have. There is threat of denial. And all of this can rob us of our strategic autonomy when it comes to war. So I think what we bring in as a young generation, a young crop of businesses, is that we are bringing in that ability to be able to do that right from the grounds up in the country. And I think that pace is going to accelerate in an unprecedented way over the next few years.
Ankit makes a very important point here. It's the adaptability, and that is essentially during a war scenario. Air Chief, sir, I'd like to come to you with that. India's, and let's focus on India at this point. The escalation ladder mechanism. We saw India go up that ladder at such a fast pace in the matter of 4 nights. And we're referring to Operation Sindoor. We're going to be approaching the 1-year anniversary of the operation. Do you feel that is dependent war to war or adversary to adversary? If you can also give us a global perspective on what mechanism of escalation ladders looks like and how it's going to look like.
Yeah, I think you bring a very important point out. Part of our entire strategy planning and the way it was executed, I think one of the brilliant aspects was how the escalation was controlled. And for that, I think the basic essentials are a very clear-cut objectives, and the response itself was graded. And the time that you wanted to end, what happened on 10th, was taken to a level where it encourages and motivates the adversary to come to the table and call it off. So that is very important. We were able to achieve our objectives, demonstrate what we had to do, and also call it off. And I think that is one of the very, very critical areas that goes into planning or execution, particularly execution. If you see at the global level, and if you are referring to what is happening now, you see how US and Israel have got into after the first week, they've continued to attack, and now it's a kind of escalation trap. They wanted regime change as one of the objectives. That hasn't happened, although there is a large-scale decapitation of the leadership. In spite of that, but the way it was worded, so now they are in their own trap. It is very difficult for them to finish. They will continue to escalate. And the war ending has actually shifted to Iranians. And they are able to extend the war by just low-cost drones and some ballistic missiles every day. So how long they will last, part of the control is shifted to Iranians. So escalation control has become a little difficult. So escalation control must be kept in mind. It's one of the very important parameters.
Understood. I'll here actually just bring in this point, and this is something you mentioned to me before we came in here, and I'd like to bring that part into the conversation. Today, we are seeing a war in Europe which has already entered its 5th year. We're seeing the war in West Asia, which was initially supposed to be on a timeline of 4 to 5 weeks. It doesn't seem to be at this point. That timeline seems to be shifting very fast. And you mentioned to me that it's not just about starting wars, it's actually about knowing when to stop them as well. And India demonstrated that. India called it off when the adversary called and asked for ceasefire. We agreed. That's when we called it off. Do you feel countries today need to keep that in mind when we start? Because the escalation ladder can go up very fast, but when do you stop? And anybody can come in here, please.
Yeah, I think in your basic planning and what you want to achieve, it must be very clear. And what you state. So publicly at level, suppose Americans say something that we have gone into war for this, till that is achieved, it's very difficult to walk back. And now, if you again see the current conflict, till the time Hormuz gets opened, that control is currently with the Iranians. So unless massive effort is put by the US and Israeli forces in order to now get back the control of Hormuz, which is easier said than done. Their entire naval might of the US is there, and the Hormuz got closed. So you see the complications, you see the limitations, you see how some of their credibility is taking a hit, and of course they will do something to get out of it. Again, goes back to objectives. Their basic objectives are nuclear and ballistics and destruction of military capability. Regime change, if it was defined differently, they could have walked out of the war within a week. So it's very important for every countries. And the next thing is, you have to now presume that every war can be extended. When you have low-cost options like loitering munitions, drones, a fair amount of autonomous vehicles, which can be a very low-cost option, countries can extend the wars, and therefore you need to be aware of your capability and how long can you sustain the war. So these are factors that go in.
Understood. Dr. Ramarao, we were discussing this, and you've been instrumental in bringing India's missile program where it is today. You've been the man behind the Akash missile, the BrahMos, the Astra. I wanted to understand from you, going forward, where things stand as of today, is India or any country, should they be looking at widening their missile arsenal, or is it more about low-cost, attritable assets? And I'll bring in Ankit a little later on that. What is the military arsenal going to look like in times to come?
See, there are two aspects. One is the weapon side, another one is the ecosystem that make the weapons operate. Weapon side means, as you say, missiles, for example, there are 5 characteristics: the range, the speed, the agility, the accuracy, and lethality. These are all weapon characteristics. All we have demonstrated in the last war that all the 5 characteristics are fully met. Now comes, how do you make these weapons effective in the battlefield? Here we popularly known as C4I2SR. Command, control, communication, computers. These play a major role, like cyber security and all. Then intelligence and information. You should need information, what's happening at the adversary side, what's happening on our side, information. Then surveillance and recognition. These are 8 characteristics that will control the war, even though you may have a very effective weapon with 5 characteristics. The 8 characteristics may make you deny the adversary what he wants to use, or they may try to see that I don't get surveillance data, I don't get navigation data. They may also try to deny. So denial will play a major role along with the weapon effectiveness. So we have to make sure weapons are made effective. The 8 parameters I told, they cannot be denied. We should have sufficient strength to make sure that our 8 characters fully available, so that the weapon and the operational system are matching with each other, and we will win any battle or any war. This is what we have to work.
Ankit, you had mentioned about adaptability. And we are going to be very responsible with this conversation without giving, and I understand you saw Operation Sindoor from a very different perspective and a very different proximity, without giving out any details which compromise Operation Sindoor, which is on. I want you to just elaborate on how India adapted to the incoming hostile projectiles and the incoming hostilities in terms of its acquisitions in defense, in terms of what it looks for when it is looking for perhaps drones, which are a major part of our arsenal.
Yeah, no, I think in terms of adaptability, I think we've learned our lessons from what happened in those 4 days. And based on that, 2-3 things are very, very clear. Number one, any assumptions that we previously had that, the attack on us will happen in a specific domain, like, for example, the assumption that the attack may come from a lot of low-cost commercial drones. That was thrown out of the window because many of the drones used were actually, some of them were Turkish drones and from other parts of the world, which were not using commercial frequencies. So if you had something that was detecting their incursion, then perhaps you would not be able to detect some of these incursions early enough, right? So therefore, wideband listening capability is going to become very important. That I think is a part of the set of procurements that would have happened post that. The ability to detect early enough is also equally important. So, and being agile or mobile with the location at which the detection capabilities are playing, again, another area that will have to be looked at very deeply. The other part is that whatever you are using to counter is also going to get similarly attacked or similarly rejected, and therefore all the assets that you're looking to get now will have to have resilience to at least electronic warfare, right? And making sure that any asset that is bought in the unmanned domain is capable of operating, even if it is denied particularly GPS and communication environment. So these are some of the basic requirements that will become part of every domain. Along with that, the upgradability of the system, the intelligence upgradation of the system is going to be another part that's going to happen, because unless you have that upgradability in field, you will not be able to use an asset and it will become obsolete very fast because the tactics will change. Last but not the least, in my opinion, there will be 2 areas that are going to be very critical going forward. One is that strategic assets will need to be extremely survivable because they are expensive, they are high technology, and they will have to be very survivable in such an environment. And number 2, we will probably pivot extremely towards low-cost attritable systems, because anything that is one-time use, a lot more nuisance can be created to destroy the adversary's high-tech assets of one-time use assets.
And it's interesting you mention the terrain that is there in India, and who would be better than the 3 gentlemen here to understand what kind of terrain? Please, you want to add something?
I will just to add what Ankit is telling. See, the low-cost attack by, what do you call it, as a commercial, semi-commercial, the drones, for example, we may have to, as a country, as in whoever is there, has to have low cost. You can't use like you talked recently, you discussed a Patriot missile you cannot use against a $10,000.
Exactly.
It looks illogical.
Economic asymmetry is glaring.
So we need weapons like laser-based weapons, microwave-based weapons or any other weapons for where you do your cost per round or cost per engagement will be very low, very effective, very comparable. This is what is the type of a weapon that technology will give. Technology, India is already busy with developing technologies for this particular, our experience of the Op Sindoor. In case of large number of attacks likely to happen, then we need low cost, effective methods of defending by different methods of, may not be every time you don't need a missile, a laser weapon or a microwave weapon or any other technology. There are many technologies happening now. It will provide the answers.
And you know, a lot of defense analysts, military analysts, they also view that the time to come is not about high cost missiles. It's going to be about low cost military assets, which can be eliminated and at the point of attack or at the point of contact. Ankit, just one more aspect I wanted to bring from you. Where do you position India's indigenous military assets? Let's take drones first. When you compare it on the global stage, because we understand there are other countries who've really mastered the art of drone warfare. We're very much seeing it here in West Asia. Where do you place India in terms of our military assets that we're producing indigenously, drones for now?
See, I think one capability that we had to ensure that we develop from get-go is the ability to operate in extreme terrain and environmental conditions. In India, we have the extremes of very low temperatures in the northern part of the country, along with very high altitude, which is a very difficult terrain to navigate and to make systems that are delivering meaningful capability there. It is something may take off, something may operate there just by doing one hop, but that's not enough. Soldiers need capability that can ensure that they're able to get their job done. And therefore, that is not something which is very easy. This is not even anybody else's problem in the world, other than our problem. And solving for that has been a cornerstone of how particularly the unmanned programs in the country have developed. And the demand on us is to be able to operate in very high altitudes and very low temperatures, down to -30, -40. We have to ensure that our operations can happen. Plus, we also have to make sure those assets can survive in the desert. They can survive in the marine environment. So we have, I would say, many countries have many environmental conditions, but no country has the kind of topographic diversity that we have, where we need to have our systems operate. So that is something very unique, and when we go and demonstrate our systems globally, it shows up really effectively. We are able to perform almost up to 90% of our stated capability in some of the most extreme environments.
And I'll come to Air Chief, sir. Military arsenal. In times to come, or I would say now, let's talk about now. The pulse right now, is it just about, and this is what analysts suggest, that it's not just about how many missiles a country has or the variety of missiles, it's also the number of terabytes you're able to transfer per second that is going to determine the actual operational achievability of your objectives in any military domain. Would you concur with that? Would you agree? Or would you think there is still more time before we arrive at that kind of a scenario?
No, we're already there and we're already behind. So it's very much there. If you just take the lessons from Sindoor and what is happening now in this conflict, it's very clear which direction we are moving. And I think some of the technology issues we are asking for future, it is so important to bring in those technologies. For example, the AI, we haven't done much on our military side. I'm not talking of AI used in some autonomy or some kind of system. AI in overall military planning and execution. AI in decision-making support in its full form. Like as this is one of the transformative methods that was used in the current conflict. So this is very important. Similarly, our networks, our ability to process huge data, again, has to be AI enabled. Our entire ISR, space-based assets that you're talking of, are cyber information. So if you're talking of terabytes per second, it has to really grow. We have networks is going to be, and our ability there is going to be the core issue. And the next issue is how to make it secure.
Right.
So in time to come, our ability in terms of destructive capability, defense capability, and cyberspace and these networks capability would really mean a lot for the deterrence. Without that, you cannot have a robust deterrence.
Understood. Now, let me just come to a very important aspect, because this is something that we all felt we're about to run out of time. I'll quickly try to fit in two more aspects to the conversation, but I want to really touch upon narrative warfare. Do you feel during India's latest skirmish at this point, it was when the DGMOs came out, the uniformed men, operational men, when they spoke about what we achieved with the photographs and everything, that the entire country, I would say, and I'm being very brutally honest here, that we understood what India achieved. Do you feel that should have happened a little earlier? And I'm saying, let's look at how other nations are bringing out their achievability on the ground as it happens, compared to that.
Yeah, I think a lot has been said about narrative and whether we control it well in Op Sindoor. Just remember, there was a plan why the initial briefing was done by lady officers of the three services, because of the nature of response and the purpose of response, and why Op Sindoor came up at all. So the effect of that within the country was undeniable. It was great. There is always a time when the details of the operation would start getting covered in such briefings. Whether it could be a little early or a little later, it doesn't really matter. To me, it was done quite okay. Just remember, it is the adversary who loses depends on narrative war. Finally, when you have those satellite pictures, when you have the kind of damage, all 9 terrorist targets, the damage was shown. What narrative do you want? It is destroyed. It is there for you to see. You can go to any site which is not connected with our presentations and see it. So I think it's been overplayed.
Understood.
But it goes without saying that we have to pay more attention to our narrative formation, especially if it's going to be a long conflict. So narrative does play a huge part, but I am not of the opinion that we did much wrong or we went totally out in our narratives. The pictures was our narrative. Nobody can deny it.
Finally, I wanted to understand, anybody can come in here. We'll quickly try to get everybody's comments before we wrap up. And I started with this, the battle of the 5 Cs that we're already seeing across West Asia and parts of Europe. Are we, and economically we are facing repercussions, are we already in World War III? Anybody who would like to come into that?
No, we are not in World War III, but certainly a large portion of world is at war. But no, we are far away from 3 as yet. And whether it will go, we are heading there? To my sense, no.
What my own view is, World War III, as you are saying, no, things are happening. It gives a feeling that there may be a World War III. If at all somebody can stop the World War III, it's only India as a country. Because we are the one who believe in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And today we are one of the probably the most respected country, respected leader who can handle this Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Nobody will believe anybody else except Bharat to do this job. I think we will, if the right decisions are taken by the leaders, there won't be any World War III, and we will be the prime player to stop World War III and see that it won't happen. This is my assessment of the current scenario, geopolitical scenario.
Ankit, a quick word before we wrap.
I think, in my opinion, history will definitely treat this period as a high conflict period and a high kinetic conflict period. Conflicts have always been there, I guess, and therefore, whether it eventually gets badged as World War III or not is only going to depend on how many parts of the world simultaneously conflicts have erupted and have been sustaining.
So you mentioned Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That's also the ethos of the channel. Yes. World is one, and that's essentially what we've always tried. And I know before this you had mentioned to me about how WION really has covered. We've seen war coverage all through the last 5 years. Since 2022, it has really dominated headlines across the world. Anything that you've observed in the way it has been brought forward on WION?
No, I remember during Op Sindoor, your coverage was pretty good and pretty factual and, like I mentioned, low noise. I've seen some of your great programs on aviation and many of the defense industry related programs. Of course, we can do much more in terms of, I think, the focus shifting to Atmanirbharta And if all of us put our attention there, that is the key. We're talking of deterrence, our capability building and indigenous capability and true capability. Not transfer of technology and setting up here. Indigenous design and development, something like this industry that is doing. And, making. And the services and putting orders on our industry. So attention to those aspects on your channels will do a lot. I think the drive to place orders with our industry and make our industry grow and become Atmanirbhar in the true sense in defense and aerospace is very important.
Dr. Ramarao.
Yeah.
I won't leave the chance to hear this from you.
No. I think WION, you have the right theme. World is one nation. I think we have to keep that. And India has the capability to integrate the whole world because of our demographic strength and our demonstration of innovation and also technology development has supported it. And our economy has shown. I think WION is the one which is really pushing it in the right direction. I think we wish WION all the best, and we are part of it you, especially from the private industry who have come out with such a fantastic performance in all fields, especially aerospace. Private industry has come up so much. Probably, I think you have to focus on the private industry to bring them up to the nation level. I think it will happen. Success will come through.
Thank you so much for the words, sir. And Ankit, you had mentioned something. You can elaborate.
No, I think in the present environment, India has a need to not just look at what we are doing, but to get in both an outside-in perspective on where we are, and to get the global perspective to us. I think WION is a channel that we look forward to observing both of those aspects for the country.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. And just to let all our viewers know what you see on screens. Sir, you'd like to come in? If you can have the mic to him. It's for the audience, sir. We're live on the channel.
Thank you so much, sir. My name is Colonel Mayank Chaube, and my first question, when I say first, I mean I'll be asking two. So my first question goes to Air Chief Marshal Bhaduria, sir. Sir, I'm a firm believer that Operation Sindoor, we won hands down on ground. But when it comes to paper, we lost it. And the reason why I think that we lost it was that we could not penetrate the social media so well as our adversary could do that. And it was very evident. My suggestion would be that if in case we have a good youth pool in our country, if our forces engages this youth pool and pushes the narrative through that medium, that would be very helpful.
Chief, sir.
We can do much more. I agree with you, we can do much more. But I wouldn't go so far to say that on paper we lost it, because just remember, when you are winning and you are hitting and you are putting objectives and you are putting the proof on the social media, where it matters, it was very clear. And some people or some people who had doubts about it, when the other foreign think tanks started writing up a couple of months after detailed analysis, even those doubts, they started to listen more. Whether services can do more or should do more, or there should be a more proactive way, yes, we should. More so because it is changing rapidly. And with AI and the moment we go to AGI and all, this whole aspect will become even more complicated. So we must step into it. We must step in. And with the latest of technology, it's an area that should be given attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. My second question goes to Dr. Ramarao. Sir, there are many young minds which are working in various fields, and they have got tremendous ideas. But what we lack is a common email, sir. Like, they have ideas for innovation. There was a youngster who came to me that he has designed a particular building which is blast proof. Now, if you go through the DRDO route, I have to contact TBRL, then he has to do the trials. So it's a very long route. It's very difficult for a common man to go through that route. If in case the common Indian has got one email ID to hit, there may be 50,000 bogus ideas, but you can find one brilliant idea. So we should have one common email ID for every person on this earth that, okay, any innovation concerning our defense forces should be shot onto that email.
Okay, idea is good. Right now, of course, there are platforms available for any common man to submit his idea, both for the three services, or DRDO or MOD. He or she can submit any great ideas to any of this. But there is no common single mail ID is not there. Probably the Ministry of Defense will notice Colonel Chaube's suggestion and see whether it can be integrated into one mail. I don't know. But right now there are platforms, there are mechanisms which any individual can give an idea to the government and get it recognized and get it implemented. That exists. But instead of multiple, can we have one? It's a point noted. Probably WION will take the lead role and see that the MOD will bring one idea. Okay.
It's a good idea to put your thoughts.
Yeah,
but I think the crux lies in ability to absorb and ability to implement. That is where we are lacking. Bright ideas, the kind of innovation taking place. But it takes so much time. We are not putting orders. So that is how we have to change ourselves. I think we should be able to take those ideas and implement it at super high speed.
Okay, so I got a question. I'm Major General Rajan Kocher, and I've got a question for you regarding drones.
Ankit.
I was actually studying the Iranian model today because everybody's talking, and they have got some lakhs of drones with them. And the first is the hardened, shelters they actually work in, because this GBU 57 also cannot, penetrate that area. Now, are we looking at hardened shelters, for our manufacturing processes? That is the first point of my question. And the second point is that are we looking at volumes? See, we are manufacturing drones, and IdeaForge is doing a wonderful job. I've been following your organization. But the numbers are not there. So I just wanted to view that how these numbers can be multiplied, because we are actually fixated by specifications, and we actually bring very, very high-end specifications. It takes a lot of time. And then, certification is also a big problem. So these are the two areas I would like you to comment on.
So thank you so much, sir. And I think there are two aspects to consider here. One is distributed production, the merit of distributed production versus consolidated, high protected environment production eventually. I think one will have to think between the trade-offs of the two, because eventually somebody will always find something for a static location to be effective. So I think that's one question we'll have to answer. The second part of numbers, I think numbers is a question of the strategic direction that the government has to take for coming up with demand. We all can only produce when there is demand. Do we have the capability of producing? Yes, we have the capability of producing. Can that capability of producing be revved up overnight when there is a dry spell? No, it cannot be. So there are certain givens that we have to understand. We have to understand Iran did not have these thousands and Ukraine does not have these lakhs of drones because they overnight thought that they should be available. They are not going to suddenly present themselves. So they have to be built, and that planning has to happen, and that demand has to be there in the system. And it has to be consistent stockpiling for the kind of assets we want. And high technology, like I said, sir, high technology has to be survivable in the present world, including, for example, a laser weapon will have to be survivable because it can become a target once used. So therefore, survivability of a high technology asset is very critical going forward. If it is single time use, then it better be low cost, because you are going to deploy it against a low cost adversary on the other end.
All right, I think that was a very engaging conversation for everybody. Thank you so much. We started with a message from the serving Army Chief. We'll now have a message to wrap up the session with a former Army Chief. Let's please have it.
Hello, and welcome to the WION Pulse Global Conclave on Defense and Deterrence, Future Warfare, and Strategic Imperatives. The manner in which wars have been prosecuted have always been ever-changing, primarily driven by technological changes. From swords and shields to gunpowder and guns, and now artificial intelligence and autonomous systems. This ever-changing character of warfare merits the consideration of not only military professionals, but the body politic as a whole. No two wars or conflicts are the same, not only in the methods of war fighting, but in the strategic outcomes hoped to be achieved. I say hoped because conflicts always have unintended consequences which are difficult to predict or control. To that end, I am sure this conclave will generate a healthy debate that will be of immense value to all stakeholders. I wish WION and all the participants all the very best. Jai Hind.
A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to all our panelists. Thank you, Shivan, for this insightful conversation. I now invite Mr. Raktim Das, CEO, Zee Media Corporation Limited, to please felicitate our panelists this afternoon. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. They have been candid. They've been very, very insightful as far as the defense sector is concerned, what it is right now and what it can become in the near future.